Welcome along to the UFC 271 live betting show on Punt School. And for those who are listening in after the fact on Trademate Sports and maybe watching on the YouTube channel too. So, g'day to everyone. A big one this weekend. We have the rematch, Adesanya versus Whittaker, number 2 for the middleweight title, along with some other great fights, which are littered with lots of Australians and New Zealanders all throughout the card. So for those people on this side of the earth, it's an exciting fight card coming up. I will go through the main card today, trying to steer you guys into some good bets. As always, I've got to be respectful for those who pay subscription fee for my picks. So I'm not going to give everything away, but I'll try and give as much of a hand as I can to all of you. We'll go through the main card today. There's 5 fights on the main card. So that will be Bobby Green and Nasrat Haqparast, Phillips versus Marcelo Rojo, Cannonier versus Brunson, Lewis versus Tuivasa, and Adesanya versus Whittaker. So we might as well get straight into it. And as always, if anyone's got any live questions, shoot them through, and I will get to them. First one, Bobby Green versus Nasrat Haqparast. I think, as most people would expect, it'll probably stay on the feet for the most part. If it was going to go to the ground, if someone was going to attempt a takedown, I assume it would be Green. Green was able to get Moises down a couple of times. So, I mean, he's a pretty accomplished grappler and wrestler. Maybe not accomplished wrestler, but, he's decent in those areas. So, I think he'll probably struggle to get Haqparast down, but if he times, I can see him, if he really wants to get a takedown, timing something in the middle of the cage, I think he should be able to get Haqparast down if he times it nicely. Up against the cage, Haqparast is a lot more versed in his takedown defense. So I could see Green, but I mean, whether he chooses to or to not, I would, I never see any harm in just throwing it out there to get Haqparast thinking a bit more. And he showed he was, vulnerable in those areas against Hooker, and his ground game isn't all that flush. You can keep him down there, but we'll see what he does. But slight edge there for Green if he does want to use it. On the feet, though, I do expect it to be very even. I would obviously I give the edge to Bobby Green. He's faced the better opponents, namely Rafael Fiziev. Went 3 rounds with him and competed really well and was able to take a lot of big shots. He's got a great chin, and he won the 3rd round too. So if you're able to go toe to toe with a guy like Fiziev, against a guy like Haqparast, who's a level below that, or maybe a couple of levels below, I would expect Bobby Green to get the better of him on the feet. But Haqparast is very solid. He's still young. He's got great fundamentals, great boxing. But Bobby Green's got the experience. He's fought the tougher guys. If I had to pick someone who's going to win the stand-up, I'd be leaning more towards Bobby Green. Also, I'd probably lean more towards Bobby Green in terms of being able to get a finish, because Haqparast, just because Green's got a very good chin. So I think he's going to be harder to finish, whereas Nasrat, I would say, still pretty tough and hard to get out of there. But I'd if you said, someone's going to get a knockout, I'd lean more to Green than Haqparast. So I think he's just got little edges everywhere. Not huge, but little edges. And I think that's why the odds are where they're at now. I'll share my screen in a second, but we've got Haqparast at 215 and Bobby Green at 1.7. I can see Bobby Green's one coming a little bit more, but I wouldn't be surprised if it stayed the same. But yeah, as I said, I think Green's just a little bit more confident in his skills, sharper, slicker in general. The thing is, Haqparast is very young. I think he's only 26, 27 now. So, when people are at that time of their career, the leaps they're going to make from fight to fight are going to be reasonably significant. And I think it's been 6 months since Haqparast's last fight, if not maybe 5 months. So I think with that amount of time between fights, it gives him a lot of time to work on certain things like his wrestling, like his grappling. And yeah, we didn't see too much of his hands last time against Hooker, but I would say he was kind of getting the better of Hooker, which says a lot. So, yeah, 1.7 for Green. I'll just get up the odds. Like in the striking, I'm not going to sit here and say that Bobby Green is 100% going to be the better striker because I think Nasrat's good. He's going to get better. So he might have made up that gap already and might be better than Bobby. But so, 215 could be value for Haqparast because if he can win the striking exchanges, it lowers his odds hugely. But I think it's just about right where it is now. I don't see value on either side. If I had to have a bet in this one, though, I would recommend Haqparast by decision because what is it, 215 now? That, means people are rating him around about a 45% chance of winning. Now, out of that 45%, what are we saying is his chances of finishing Bobby Green? I would say it's pretty darn low, like pretty low, 10 to 15% maybe his chances of finishing him. So Bobby Green's got a great chin. Haqparast hasn't got like amazing power. So if you force me to have a bet on this right now, I'd say the best one bet here is Haqparast by decision at 3.4. Wouldn't say it's huge value, but I still think it's definitely bet worthy. So that would be one I would recommend there. Moving along, Marcelo Rojo and Kyler Phillips. Let me just stop sharing my screen. All right. I think Phillips is the better MMA fighter. He's better, well-rounded, especially in the grappling and wrestling. And I also think he's going to be very hard to hit for Rojo. Like he's just in and out so quickly. You don't really know what's coming in his attacks. He's doing a really good job of being very unpredictable, very unorthodox, throwing some wild attacks, but also staying quite safe and not getting hit. For a young guy, I'm very impressed about Kyler Phillips. I think, eventually we'll see him in the top 10. But I can, there's definitely still holes there for Rojo to exploit. He hasn't fought, I think, in a year or so. So, I mean, we might see a completely different kind of fighter after his loss to Jourdain. But I can see Rojo looking to press the action while Phillips starts in and out with his attacks and tries to, Phillips tries to time takedowns on Rojo, which he's very good at. He's very good at timing takedowns. And I think that's probably his best path to victory, Phillips, is trying to get this to the ground. Rojo looked a little out of sorts for me on the ground when he faced Jourdain, and Jourdain's not really a noted grappler. So I think Phillips can keep him, and from what I've seen of Phillips, he looks great on the ground. So I think Phillips can keep him down there for periods if he's just patient and work for a submission, maybe just work some ground and pound, maybe just work for a decision. And also on the feet, I think Phillips is better too. So for me, I understand where the odds are at, but the problem is Phillips he's still so young. I mean, I think he's 25, maybe even younger than that. And when you've got a young fighter like this going up against someone like Rojo, who's, solid in all areas, it's kind of a scary prospect to be backing such low odds. But I kind of understand why they are this wide apart. I think if Rojo is going to win, I would assume, I think his best chance of winning is by knockout. So, yeah, I mean, Kyler does find himself in the pocket every now and then, in that close range, and that's a risky thing. Whereas if I was him, I'd be all the way out or all the way in to a takedown. So I think, Rojo's best path to victory is keeping this on the feet, try and not get taken down, and land a big punch to end Phillips's night, or just a big punch that changes the outcome of the fight in a sense, and he wins a decision. So, but I mean, we saw in that last fight, Phillips and Piver, Kyler's very tough to put away, so it's not going to be easy. He's probably going to have to, end his night with one punch, or, really take advantage of the time when he rocks him. So, kind of like the last one, if you're making me have a bet, if I have to have a bet in this one, just looking at the market here, I'll bring it up. I would more so be leaning towards Rojo KO at 775 here. I think that's probably the best angle. Just for me, I feel like he's got a better chance of winning this fight through a knockout than beating Phillips in a decision, just because Phillips is kind of better everywhere. So, and if you wanted to go with a Phillips angle, it's tough because I think he could seriously get it done anyway. I think the KO is a bit too low, but I'd maybe be looking at the sub for Phillips. Because from what I saw of Rojo, he didn't look too competent on the ground, and I think Phillips does, and I could see him, catching him in a transition sub, or even just working for one normally. So, I think if you had to put a bet on Phillips, that would be more so my angle. Alrighty, number 3. I'll have a drink of water first. This will be fun. Great to see they booked another middleweight bout on the same card as the middleweight title fight. So it gives us a bit of a picture of what's next after the title fight. But we've got Cannonier versus Brunson. I think, so this is just classic wrestler versus striker, wrestler being Brunson, the striker being Cannonier. I think Brunson, it's going to be harder for him to get Cannonier down consistently like he did against Till. And even against Till, there were times where he defended, even though he was pretty deep in on a takedown, Brunson was, and Till was still able to defend. And I think Cannonier's takedown defense is a level above Till's. So I think Brunson overall will struggle to get Cannonier down. Like, he's going to, let's just say he gets him down twice. He's probably attempted 6 times, maybe, something like that. He's going to have to really going to have to time it. 1 or 2, he's just going to have to be relentless with it. And, and just maybe try and exhaust Cannonier, but I can see Brunson exhausting himself in an attempt to just get it to the ground. But he is just relentless with those takedowns, even against Till. Like I said, Till defended a lot of the attacks, but he just kept going over and over and over. And, the more you try, the better chance you have of landing one. The closer you are to your next, your next takedown attempt that actually works. So I think Brunson can get him down. It's just a matter of what happens after that, and I'll get to that soon. But I think on the feet, I mean, Cannonier is clearly better. My biggest worry with Cannonier, though, is he's pretty low output, even against Gastelum. Like, that was a bloody close fight if you go back and watch that fight. You could really have made an argument for Gastelum winning that fight. I mean, some of those rounds that Cannonier won were a knife's edge. And yeah, sure, I scored it for Cannonier too, but you know, anyone that scored it for Gastelum, you can't really have too much of a go at them. So yeah, his output is quite low. You know, he'll be smashing in those leg kicks, but the problem is I don't know if he will try any leg kicks just because he wants to keep, you know, doesn't want to give Brunson an opportunity of taking him down. And yeah, I just worry for Cannonier that his output could be so low and he could be so worried about the takedown that he could just lose a decision just through not being active enough, and Brunson constantly on the front foot. I mean, you could almost, like, similar to how the Maximov-Soriano fight played out last week. So I could see Brunson just winning a decision, maybe not landing that many takedowns, but just because Cannonier hasn't really done much and Brunson's, you know, constantly trying to wrestle him, could win a few rounds like that. I think if Cannonier, his best way is just to be aggressive. I think he's got to be on the front foot, trying to finish or at least land strikes on Brunson and back him up. Because as long as Brunson's backing up, the harder it's going to be for him to land a takedown. You know, if you're getting to the you know, if Brunson's the one on the front foot, his takedowns are going to come easier, and he's going to be able to control him up against the fence. But if he, yeah, I think if he's hesitant and waits on Brunson, he could be in trouble. So if it does go to the ground, yeah, I'm not 100% sold either way, to be honest. If Cannonier does get taken down, I can see Jared getting back up to his feet relatively quickly, like he did against Whittaker and Hermanson. But I think that would be maybe because Brunson was too aggressive. Like, he got him down, looked to transition straight away, looked for a sub, looked for some ground and pound straight away. I think Brunson's smartest thing to do would be to just hold position and take things slowly. He did a great job against Till of holding position and also landing some big strikes. So I'm not 100% sold either way on how, because Cannonier has been able to get up to his feet relatively quickly against Hermanson and Whittaker, but both of those fighters aren't exactly strong, ruthless on top. Like, they're not known for holding people down for long periods. Maybe you could say that for Hermanson, but really, when he has held people down for long periods, it was against, you know, guys like Shabazian, who, you know, not that great on the ground. So I'm not really sold either way there. If you can hold him down for a long while, then that's a round lost basically for Cannonier. So yeah, he's got to avoid as many takedowns as possible if his jiu-jitsu isn't great and he can't get back to his feet. I agree with the current odds. Yeah. So at the moment, let me just get the odds up. You've got Brunson, Cannonier. Yeah, Brunson 2.36 and Cannonier at 1.59. I agree with those for the most part. I think potentially, depending on how confident everyone is about Cannonier's takedown defense, that he could go a bit lower. But yeah, looking around at some of these markets, I mean, KO deck for Cannonier's probably not the worst angle at 1.64. I mean, his chances of submission are very, very, very small, but I mean, that's probably not a big enough difference for you. I would say just in general, I think it could be a really low output fight. I think if Brunson gets him down to the ground, he might opt for position over damage and just eke out a decision. And, you know, Cannonier is good on the ground too, so it's going to be hard to absolutely maul on the ground. Whereas for Cannonier, I think, yeah, sure, he could knock him out for sure, but I think these numbers are way too small for me. Sorry, we got Cannonier at 2.16 for KO. It's just way too low for me, I think. Yeah, I really do think that Brunson even against Till, like he took a few punches and then ended up getting him to the ground in a scramble. So Cannonier just has to be so clued in at all times, so focused. Even if he rocks Brunson, even if Brunson's slightly wobbled, he can't go rushing in and look to finish the fight in a, reckless style, because Brunson will just take him down. So considering Cannonier has to be so patient and, worry about that takedown, I kind of think there's a good chance it goes the distance. And I noticed before that Top Sport have a special on the fight to go the distance at 250. So I think that's a good bet to take. I mean, hopefully those out there don't want to bet more than $100 because the max bet $100. But I think if you don't want to bet more than $100, yeah, that's a great bet for the fight to go the distance at 250. I think the true odds, the odds normally without the boost are 234. So even 234, I don't think it's the worst bet in the world. So yeah, I don't mind the fight to go the distance, but not normally something I venture into, but I think that bet makes sense. So that'll be a recommendation there. Moving onwards though, the fight of the night. The one that probably most people are looking forward to the most, which says a lot considering you've got the main event that we have. But yeah, Tai Tuivasa versus Derrick Lewis. I think if you want to look at this from a pretty simplistic view, they're both kind of the same fight, or very similar in the way they approach their fights. They want to find the knockout as soon as possible, or they want to knock you out eventually. So you would think this will be on the feet basically the whole time. I mean, I've heard lots of theories being banded around by certain experts, but I mean, I just can't see Lewis being wasting his energy to take Tuivasa down, and the other way around too. I think Tuivasa even tried it. I think he did try a takedown against Sakai, which is probably not a bad idea because Sakai, hasn't got the greatest wrestling. But the only bit of wrestling I can see here is when they're up against the fence, if that ever happens. So, and that's dangerous. If it ever does get up against the fence, whoever's in the stronger position is in serious. Well, the one who's not in the strongest position, the person who's against the fence, is seriously vulnerable to a big shot. Okay, but overall, probably plays out mostly in the center of the octagon. I'd say Tuivasa is more technical, and he's going to have a higher output. And he's just overall, I would say, a more. I think technical is probably the best word to put it. He's he's more likely to be a bit more trickier with his striking. Like he's gonna leg kick trying to set up something later. He's trying to break you down a lot more than Lewis is. Lewis is more of an exploder. He's trying to almost lull you in and then explode. He's trying to corner you against the cage and explode. But it's hard to say who's got the speed advantage here. I don't really side with either of them on that. But I do think Tuivasa, the longer the fight goes, the more we're getting into a decision territory, or, the more they tire, the more, Lewis's attacks will be less explosive. And the more where, someone like Tuivasa, who's a little bit more technical, or at least fights more technical, that's where he's going to, his chances increase. I think just in general, Tuivasa's chances will increase as the fight goes longer. So yeah, game plan for Tuivasa would be don't get stuck on the cage, because when he has his opponents up against the cage, Lewis unleashes. And my other tip for Tuivasa, if he wants it, is to absolutely smash him with leg kicks. We've seen it in multiple fights with Tuivasa. I don't think we've seen it really come to fruition yet, just because he normally gets the finish before the leg kicks start to pay dividend. But like in that Greg Hardy fight, trying to think back to some other ones, he's got great leg kicks, and I think he could really chew up Lewis's front leg, which does multiple things. It obviously scores in points, and it slows Lewis down so much in terms of his explosive attacks. So Tuivasa, if he just, I mean, I know he probably wants to put on a show, and that's the biggest worry for me. If Tuivasa is very smart and technical about this, you just stay away from the cage, try and keep it in the middle as much as you can, don't get backed up against the cage, and smash him with leg kicks when you get the chance. Don't be overzealous, don't rush in with anything too early. Try and break him down from the bottom. Whereas if I'm Lewis, avoid the leg kicks if Tuivasa does try to employ them, and do what he normally does. Like, I think we can pretty much see exactly what Lewis is going to do. Just explode here and there and try and corner Tuivasa and try and catch him. I think the winner of this fight most likely is the person who dominates the cage, probably. So the person who's either dominating the center or has got better cage control and is putting the other person on the back foot is probably going to win this fight, because both of them are very dangerous when they have their opponent cornered. Both of them can knock out each other. Lewis should be the favorite because he's been doing this longer, facing better opponents. Probably got more power. I mean, they've both got serious power, so I don't even know if that's worth even mentioning. Sorry. The one thing I would note, though, is Tuivasa's chin. I feel like he's got a very good chin. I've just got this feeling. I mean, he's got a massive head, which helps, for one. And the only time seen him wobbled really was against Hardy, and Hardy cracked him with a big punch, and he stumbled a little bit, but he wasn't. You'd say he was rocked. He wasn't. He wasn't seeing stars in a way. He was just a little bit off balance. I mean, you could, even in the JDS fight when he got TKO'd, it wasn't through being knocked out. It was just through, like, he just literally didn't know how to defend himself. So I'd say two of us has got a better chin than Lewis, probably, and there's a chance that he might be able to take a Lewis bomb or two. There might be a chance. It would be incredible, but there is a chance, I think, that Tuivasa could have a great chin, and if Lewis, if he has a good enough chin to withstand Lewis KO, then, Lewis is in serious trouble. I just see Tuivasa's just making strides. And I mean, I don't think he's going to make huge strides in this fight because it's only 2 months after his last one. But, Sakai was the first decent striker Tuivasa's fought, and he passed with flying colours. I didn't, he was a little bit susceptible in the clinch, but I mean, Lewis isn't going to be the same in those, like, he's not going to, smash him with knees or anything like that. He's not tall enough. But so, overall, let's have a look at the odds. We've got Tuivasa at 2.49 and Lewis at 1.55. Have a look at some of these prop markets. Tai Tuivasa decision, 8.5. Lewis decision, 6.75. Lewis KO, 1.91. Tai Tuivasa KO, 3.3. I think that Tuivasa is going to come in. I think he just should be shorter than this. I'd price him around 2.3. So there's your first bet. if you just want to back Tuivasa on the money line, because I do think that there's a chance that this could go to decision. What is the odds on that? Will the fight go to decision? Yes, 4.7. That's not even the worst bet in the world either. The other one I liked was Tuivasa decision at 8.5. I think if it does go to decision, Tuivasa is more likely to win a decision than Lewis would, because he's got a better gas tank. He's probably going to have better output. So he favors more towards winning a decision if neither of them can knock the other one out. So, yeah, that's how I see that fight. And so, yeah, I think Tuivasa 2.49 is probably your best bet there. And, yeah, I'd happily recommend that one. I think I bet Tuivasa at 2.62 earlier in the week. So, yeah, I think that's a good bet. All right, last one. The main event, the middleweight title fight, the rematch. So for those who don't know, I think it was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Adesanya KO'd Whittaker in the second round, rocked him in the first, finished him in the second, and it was basically total domination. But I do believe this is a completely different fight. I think Whittaker will learn a lot from that fight. He was just, as most people would know, he was lunging in, very desperate, as he's mentioned in interviews. His ego got the best of him. He wanted to prove that, that he was the best striker, the best fighter in the middleweight division. And it all got to his head and he fought emotionally. And, yeah, he got absolutely ruined by Adesanya. So I think this time he's going to be a lot more patient. I think, he's not going to go lunging in with, those crazy kind of, punches that he was going for. I think he's really going to pick his shots. And, I just think in general, this could be a lot more, a pretty low output fight in general, in terms of big actions. I can see high output from Izzy in terms of his leg kicks. But outside of that, I think it could be like a really, really tactical fight. Like I couldn't really see it being like a fight of the night kind of bout, because if it does get into that territory, I just see one of these guys, especially Adesanya, most likely KOing Whittaker. So, yeah, I think Izzy is the better striker, obviously. But he has a lot more to think about this time around, because as we've seen from Rob in his last 3 fights, he's started to work in takedowns into his offense, and that's they're beautifully timed, beautifully executed. I mean, he's not a wrestler, but it just shows that if you can master the timing of a takedown and mix it in with your other parts of your game, it's such an effective weapon to have. So Izzy's got a lot more to think about, because I can't see Rob doing the same thing on the feet. And secondly, now he has to think about the takedown too, which I don't think he would have been too worried about in the first fight. He knows that Rob can take him to the ground if Rob times him. And he'll, like I said, he knows that Rob's not going to be as sloppy on the feet. So, yeah, can see this being a pretty low volume fight. Is he looking to land a lot of leg kicks and hope that Whittaker might get frustrated with those leg kicks and overcommit to something, or, overcommit to a takedown. Yeah, just in general get a bit sloppy. I think Adesanya's just going to wait on Whittaker for most of the fight. In terms of offense, I think it'll mostly be leg kicks, but it will be very interesting to see. I mean, his leg kicks are so quick, but I think Whittaker will be looking at trying to take him down with those leg kicks too. So, yeah, it's just going to be so fascinating to see how it plays out. I think, Whittaker will probably go with a similar game plan, just a lot more risk averse. So less output. And his key to victory is trying to get those takedowns. And I do think he can get Israel to the ground if he times them. He can't, he can't do a Brunson and just overwhelm. Literally, that's all he's doing, not throwing a single punch. He's just working to get that takedown. But yeah, on the ground, it could be really interesting. I think Rob could potentially hold him down there for some time. But the thing is, in all of Rob's fights, he hasn't really held any of his opponents down for long periods of time. But he's got good jiu-jitsu. So I think for Rob, if he does get him down, work for position, just try and hold him down. He's got good transitions, but just be patient, hold him down for a bit. And I would almost wait for Izzy to make a mistake when trying to get back up, which he did versus Vettori, and he ended up on his back, with Vettori on his back. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if Rob was able to get Izzy's back at some point, and that really makes things interesting. Because if Rob can keep him down for long periods of time, then it just makes the fight so much more interesting. Rob doesn't really work for submissions from what I've seen. He's more looking for position, which is good, obviously. But I think if he's more worried about position, then hopefully, or if you're a Whittaker fan, Adesanya just tries to escape and put himself in a bad position because it's Adesanya's worst part of his game. He's got arguably the best striking in the UFC. He's got good takedown defense, especially up against the cage. But other than that, on the ground, he's run of the mill. So unless he's made huge improvements there, we don't know. It's a lot to take into account. I think overall, Whittaker basically has to fight the perfect fight, which is a worry because, that would rarely happen in any kind of fight. He has to avoid, a large amount of leg kicks from Adesanya. He has to avoid rushing in and getting caught. And he almost has to land takedowns if he's going to want to win a decision or it's his best path to victory. So he almost does have to land takedowns. All right, looking at the current odds. Adesanya 1.37, Whittaker 3.2. If you like Adesanya KO, they've got a nice little special here, Top Sport, for $50 at threes. So that's pretty decent. Sorry, just trying to get my bearings around here. So if you want a long shot, I think Whittaker subs a little bit big. I know he's literally never got a submission in his life, but there's a good chance he could get Israel down, and there's a good chance Israel could find himself in a bad position. And 16s for me. I think that's worth a little pop if you want to have a big speculator. But I do think 3.2 for Whittaker is a little bit high too. I mean, I'd be inclined. I don't think it's a huge edge, but I'd be inclined to bet Whittaker over threes, somewhere over 3, and I think 3.2 would be good enough for me. His takedown timing is just awesome, and I think he can definitely take Israel to the ground. And if he can get Israel to the ground, then anything could happen. Anything could happen. He could find a submission. He could just keep him down there for periods of time. The main thing is I think it's going to be a pretty low output fight. And Whittaker's going to be very patient. And I think he's a completely different fighter to the one that fought years ago. So a little bit wide for me. And yeah, I think Whittaker's just a little bit too high. So if you want a value play, I think 3.2 for Whittaker is a decent bet. All right. And that does it for today. For those who are new to this stream, the live show here, please, if you're keen, go and subscribe to MMA Punt School, which is the service I run through Punt School. You'll get a lot more tips than I went through today, and we're running at I think a 17% ROI or something like that, around that. So yeah, going really well. But those people just on the channel, subscribe to Punt School. If you're interested, as I said, in the service, check my results out of velabetting.com and you can subscribe there too. But yeah, those watching on Trademate, Punt School, do all the good stuff, like and subscribe. And enjoy the fights this weekend. It should be a very fun Sunday for Australians and for those around the world watching on Saturdays or Sunday mornings. It's a cracking card from top to bottom too. There's some great fights on the early prelims and just standard prelims. So yeah, I'll be back next week. I believe it's I think it's Adesanya and Fiziev, which is a another cracking fight. So let's see you all back next week. But enjoy the fights this weekend, and cheers.